let's all just say what the elephant in the room is: race.
Race.
Yeah, right.
I mean, that's the real issue for people. We talk about the divide. It's the unknown. There's a certain group of people that predominantly live in the West End and not in other neighborhoods.
Just the whole culture and not having a lot of diversity in, the neighborhoods. It felt like a setback because you don't see people different from you.
I guess you grow up and you don't notice it because you think everybody's living like you.
Yeah, exactly.
I didn't notice there was another way to live until you got bused. Really, your first little birthday party somewhere else.
Hatred never ceases by hatred, but by love alone is healed.
A battle.
To be as inclusive as I always thought I was.
The struggle of a lifetime for Mary Furlong.
I was 13 when we moved here.
That was more than 60 years ago. Today, the quirky, eccentric 75-year-old lives in the same home by the river, buying it from her parents when they died.
It tore me up. I'm like, I just can't imagine anybody else living here. I just can't.
A self-proclaimed pack rat.
These are my martial arts books. These are my meditation books.
She sits in one of her many libraries.
It's like having high-class company.
Helping her on a journey that started right here 6 decades ago.
Many for sale signs had gone up all around the neighborhood.
Mary says people were leaving 47th Street because of a new family on the block.
These two physicians, married physicians, moved in next door.
Mary's new neighbors were thrown into the center of controversy. Angry block meetings were held in their front yard. The message clear: the new family was not welcome.
I figured out right away where I stood.
The uproar, the tension, the reason homes were going up for sale. Mary says it all had to do with one thing. The family who moved to 47th Street was black, everyone else white.
Oh, I felt horrible. I thought, what is wrong? What is wrong with, they're not even trying to get to know him.
Mary's parents taught her to embrace differences, but not everyone on 47th Street thought the same way. For sale signs continued to pop up as white families left Chickasaw.
There were rumors that if one black family moves in, the value of your house is going to drop. You're going to lose your life investment, your life savings. You better get out now while you still have a chance.
Tracy Kmeyer is a history professor at U of L and has studied the West End at length. She says the history of segregation in Louisville is complex.
Blockbusting is when real estate agents would sell a house on a formerly white block to a black family and then would encourage other white families to move using fear tactics.
As whites moved out, urban renewal projects in other parts of the city were reducing the amount of housing available for African American families.
And they really didn't have any choice but to move to the West End.
Also in the mix, a group of factories known as Rubber Town that raised health concerns with worsening air quality, causing more families to move. Kmeyer says it's what some call environmental racism.
It's more acceptable in the public eye to put factories that have major environmental impacts in neighborhoods that are distressed or largely minority.
White residents moving from the West End didn't happen overnight. Kmeyer says there was a group that banded together to keep the West End integrated and thriving.
The idea the West End Community Council had was to try to stop that by encouraging families to say, no, I'm not leaving. So they had people, again, putting up the yard signs, signing pledges that they would welcome black neighbors and not, join this blockbusting rush.
Some of the issues from then are still the struggles of today.
There's a lack of both government and business investment in the West End. One of the big controversies all through the 1960s was the effort to get a shopping center and a grocery store.
The battle to become integrated was lost. Today, 96% of the people living in Chickasaw are African American. Mary's a minority on the street, but as happy as ever, comfortable in the one place that truly feels like home, surrounded by neighbors who accept her.
If she's going to go away, she lets me know. If I'm going to go away, she puts my newspapers in my door.
And it's that kind of neighborly love she tries so hard to extend to everyone.
I must confess one bias, which is I'm really prejudiced against racists.
That's her battle, the golden rule, treating others like she wants to be treated even when she thinks what they're doing is wrong.
Separate the behavior from the person, that the person is more than their behavior.
Remembering how terribly her neighbors were treated still upsets Mary, but those memories also push her forward.
Here's what I figured out about bad people. When those bad people behave that way to that man and his wife, it made me a better person, because in me it awakened a compassion that never went away.
And that compassion has changed a lot of lives. Mary went on to be active in the civil rights movement and then became a school teacher in Queens, one of the most diverse places on the planet. Her challenge to all of us is to be slow to judge, understanding that behind a lot of anger is actually hurt. She says we could all use a lot more of the golden rule. And I knew there was going to be some pushback, and then we moved to the West End, and we were talking at a restaurant one day, and they're like, oh, where do you live? We're like, we live in West Louisville. And this woman almost like falls out of her chair, and her friend is laughing hysterically, and then she stops and goes, wait, that wasn't a joke?
I grew up in the West End, and I've been in the media almost 30 years myself. And it's very hard to hear some of the things that people say.
People will continue to have that perception, but unless you haven't come down to see us and experience our culture, our diversity down here, what do you have to say about this end of town? That's just a stereotype that needs to be squashed.
And I get to talk about West End, and I use the word like us or we. They be like, oh, but you're not one of them. I'm like, yes, I am. I was born, and it just people's jaws drop.
And I started to realize that the perception isn't just like one or two people who see West Louisville as only crime. It is so many people. But at the same time I'm experiencing this, I'm meeting my neighbors, the nicest neighbors I had in my entire life.
We really want to address and talk about what really happens here, what is it really like here, because that stigma is out there for whatever reason, and it's hard to get beyond that.
Why do you live in the West End?
And honestly, that's a common question, because typically when you get to a certain income or a certain class, the expectation is for you to move more to the suburban area.
Successful people don't live in West Louisville. Sounds harsh, but it's a widespread stereotype even in the workplace.
I'm in management, so the response I've received is like, management people don't live in the West End. I said, well, this one does.
Kim Lee has a college education. She's smart, successful, and driven. She has no plans to leave her home.
I felt like it was my calling to stay in the West End. I felt like that God wanted people there just, to help out, role models, people to look up to.
An example that beyond the crime and frustration is hope.
I grew up in the projects, and then I was able to go to school, get a scholarship at UK.
Despite what you might have heard about the West End, Kim embraces her neighborhood. She loves it. As a single mother, she depended on it.
If you told me it takes a village to raise children, I had a village. He would come over and shut my garage and text me, you left your garage open again. And my kids were playing sports, and Mr. Green would bring them home from the football field.
Because life on this Chickasaw street is not about fear, but about family. On a day-to-day basis, when you need someone to watch your child, feed your dog, or help you move a heavy piece of furniture, your neighbors are there. You're part of a team.
And we're proud to live here too, so we really are. We're very proud.
Kim says you can't deny the crime in West Louisville, but you have to see it in context.
It's targeted crime. So when you live down here and you do what's right, you are not going to be bothered. I've been down here my whole entire life.
This is 9th Street, and it's become a line that separates West Louisville from the rest of the city. It's a barrier that a lot of people just don't cross. All you have to do is jump on your computer and you can find words of warning. If you're white, be careful. In fact, maybe you should just avoid this area of town altogether. It's a warning I've heard over and over again, but is it true?
West Louisville changed my life.
Adam Eisenberg hadn't spent more than an hour in West Louisville his entire life until.
So I decided that I was going to take it upon myself, kind of take a little bit of compassion and try to just go and walk the streets over there and just try to understand people's perspectives.
What Adam found wasn't what he expected.
It's a remarkably close-knit community. It's a place where people have a lot of really, really deep concern for their neighbors.
Adam plugged in with groups already working in the West End and even planned a baseball game between police officers and citizens. He gave up his career in commercial lending and now he's in seminary. His plan is to become a pastor and work to bridge the gap between the West and East ends of the city.
A lot of people are getting sick and tired of being sick and tired, and they're losing hope. Hope is a wonderful thing. It's one of the best things in the world, and when you take that from somebody, what else do you have?
Hope of a different future, one where crime has to move to the background and everyone can see what people like Kim see. A beautiful neighborhood with vibrant people, historic homes, and so much potential.
People that believe in the West End, we actually show our beliefs. it becomes contagious. So we speak about it. We live about it and we act upon it. Then we help them to believe as long as we continue to believe.
We know that the West End is so much more than crime, and we've made it our goal to highlight some of the good things happening here. If you have a story idea that you think would change the dialogue on the West End, find us on Facebook or shoot me an email at jcwall@whas11.com. That's jcwahl@whas11.com.